Hi, I'm Matt, here in Michigan.
And I'm Randall here in Texas. With the upcoming release of the latest James Bond film, finally, Matt and I are taking a look back at Daniel Craig's first outing as James Bond, Casino Royale from 2006. Clearly, it stars Daniel Craig, Ava Green, Judi Dench, Mad Mikkelsen, and is directed by Martin Campbell, who's also known for The Mask and Legend of Zorro, Vertical Limit, and of course, the previous reinvention of James Bond, GoldenEye, which we already have a review of. But before we get too far into this flashback review, remember if you like this video, give it a like. Those likes really help us out. If you want to see more, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon if you always want to know when we're uploading our latest videos.
Casino Royale is a James Bond origin story of sorts. Bond is a confident British Secret Service agent. His mission is to beat a terrorist in a high-stakes poker game, to leave him no choice but to help Western intelligence agencies combat a secret terrorist organization. Now, this is the 21st Bond film. It had a budget of $150 million and earned more than $616 million. Casino Royale was well received by critics and audiences and is one of the highest rated James Bond films. Alright, Randall, I'll let you have the first go at this one, Casino Royale.
Oh, no, Matt. Before we get into any retrospective thoughts on this film, we're going to have to take a stroll down Cars and Movies.
Cars and movies.
Oh my god, I remember it like it was yesterday. When this film came out, there was a headline: James Bond drives a Ford. And I thought to myself, well, of course he does. Ford owns Aston Martin at the time. In this one, for a hot second, headline inducing, James Bond drives a 2007 Ford Mondeo. Oh my gosh, so scandalous. But don't worry, he's gonna trade up for that. People act like it's the first time James Bond drove a Ford, but let's be honest. He actually drove a 1969 Mercury Cougar, way back on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So I don't see what the big headline-inducing thing was, but whatever. His other car of note, of two other cars of note, really, an Aston Martin DBS, given to him by Q Branch, full of... Wait, no, not full of a whole bunch of gadgets. Well, that was interesting. But it did have a couple of tricks up its sleeve. An AED, which he will studiously need later in the film. And, most importantly, is well known in this film for setting a world record for most times a car flips on screen with 7 flips. Pretty epic. But it wouldn't be a really cool James Bond film or a really awesome Cars and Movie segment without a classic car. James Bond's super famous, probably the most well-known James Bond car, 1964 DB5. Oh, just thinking about the DB5 makes me, love that car. It's probably one of the most beautiful cars. It has its James Bond origins all the way back when Sean Connery was still playing the role in Goldfinger, and has made subsequent appearances with a whole host of other James Bonds, including the aforementioned Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye, where you see the DB5. It is such a classic, such an iconic car, and if anyone wants to drop one off in my parking lot, they'd be more than welcome. This has been Cars and Movies, James Bond edition. And now, back to the review. Casino Royale. So the fun thing about Casino Royale is how much of a risk it was at the time. It's actually crazy to think that there was this thought at the studio of, hey, we're coming off of Die Another Day, which had just set the record for being the most successful James Bond film monetarily ever. Are we really going to reinvent this character? Or, we got Pierce Brosnan on contract for one more film. Should we just do another Pierce Brosnan film? Well, you know what? I'm super happy that, nothing against Pierce Brosnan and his films as James Bond, but this film, Casino Royale, was what James Bond needed to be relevant and survive well into the 21st century in my mind. So going back and watching it, I absolutely still love this film. It is my favorite Daniel Craig James Bond film Absolutely. And it's way up there on my list of just plain out and out favorite James Bond films.
Me, I think this is probably the most well put together James Bond film, though it's not my favorite James Bond film. It's not even my favorite Daniel Craig James Bond film. But I think this is an excellent origin story for James Bond. We really build up this character in this film. At the end, we basically explain, like, this is why James Bond is the way he is. Yes, Randall, agree. This is a great, reinvigoration of the character at the time and stuff too. For spy films, a lot of people were watching the Bourne series and were kind of leaning more to the Matt Damon character. So yes, this definitely gave another jolt to the James Bond franchise. Still stayed true, I think, to the character that we know, the iconic James Bond, but also add a new life to it.
I'm going to go against one thing that you said there, okay? Just going to outright and get to it. You had mentioned that this is like maybe the most well put together James Bond film, and to a point I agree with you, and I 100% agree with you about how at the end of this, you get to just see this is why James Bond is the way James Bond is. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I agree with all of that except for the part where you say it's the most well put together James Bond film. The studio is taking this big risk going against all of the established James Bond tropes, all of the established James Bond canon, and saying let's just start from scratch and tell this story. But I don't think the studio had all of the faith in it that you are maybe giving them, because the movie's overly long. It's like 2.5 hours long, and it has two very distinct endings. It's like, all right, the film's ending. This is where the bad guy's gotten his comeuppance and everything. Okay, cool, film ends. And then you have this really long, drawn-out thing with Vesper, which is the character played by Eva Green. And it's not that it's not important. It's just that I thought to myself while rewatching it, wow, Sony did not have, a whole bunch of faith that this was going to work out. Because if they did, they wouldn't have made this as though, one whole story. And if it doesn't work, we can throw Daniel Craig away and just go back to the way things used to be. So that whole drawn out ending for me, even though it works, I still look at it and say, wow, they didn't know that this was going to be successful. Definitely. They were not sure.
Yeah, me, when I first saw this film, I thought too about the ending was a little bit, different or, prolonged, and it does seem longer, but I think now on subsequent viewings and stuff, I actually think differently on it, and I actually think the strength of this movie is the writing and stuff too. We don't get to that end of James Bond. I don't think James Bond fully learns his lessons until the end of the movie. So for me, I think it is all kind of planned to have that. I mean, our big lessons we're going with James Bond is his overconfidence, and he's learning about his, getting over his overconfidence or his ego with the card game. But the other part too is talking about how James Bond approaches relationships and, what is, someone's teller, what is their weakness. And for James Bond in this movie, Eva Green's character Vesper is his weakness. I mean, it's used against him throughout. And also, I think he needs that last little part of the movie that we have after, the first ending, I guess you'd say the second ending. We need all that to happen to create this James Bond character. I don't think the movie can really end on that point where it's kind of up in the air on how James Bond would go. I think a lot of times of some other, James Bond films, maybe we do kind of end there. But I think this movie definitely was building up to the ending that it has.
Yes, but I'll tell you what, this is a little thing for the fandom out there. I went through and just watched all the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, and I'm not going to get too far into the weeds about it. They're all kind of overly long, except for one, Quantum of Solace, the follow-up to this one, which is about 1 hour and 40 minutes long. What could have been the start of Quantum of Solace if you just put an extra, half hour on top of it? The entire end of James Bond's Casino Royale. Because it leads directly into the next film, basically. It would have been interesting. It would have been even more extreme of the studio to say, yeah, we're going to legitimately go in and tell this 2-part story where we end a James Bond film on a cliffhanger for once. Like, oh, okay, that's weird. No, maybe that wouldn't have been as successful. But I'm not gonna, get too far into the weeds on all the other films. Try and stick to Casino Royale. I'm still thought it was longer than it needed to be, even if all of the parts that are told are simultaneously important to what becomes the character of James Bond, especially at the end, where you're just like, nope, I'm now as shields up, Captain, basically.
Me, I agree. This is a longer James Bond film, and it's also one of those James Bond films that I don't think you can just have on in the background, casually viewing it while doing something else. I think it's really something that you actually have to invest yourself in and pay attention to different scenes. But for me, I really don't feel the length as much watching this. Maybe on the first viewing it felt a bit longer, but me, I think some of this movie, like I was mentioning, the writing being so good, is so intertwined. There's not a whole lot of throwaway scenes in this movie. So for me, it actually moves along pretty well, and I don't quite feel that longer length that this James Bond film is.
But Matt, did you notice something about this film that was maybe a little off-putting watching it again? Because I certainly noticed something that was like, ha ha ha, that's funny.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but
When was the last time you saw flip phones? The technology in this film. Usually all these James Bond films, they're like pushing forward like the craziness of like tech and everything and the gadgets and everything. And in this particular one, I really felt like the tech aged because let's be honest, Sony they shoved everything in. Sony Ericsson phones, Sony Vaio laptops. They even have like a whole like shot of a Blu-ray emblem. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Besides the fact that it was just such ridiculous product placement in a James Bond film, it just really shows, wow, that technology hasn't aged very well. Because even if Blu-rays and ultra HD and everything are still around, it's certainly not the way that we capture video today. We save it to disk drives. We have our smartphones, and the technology of this film absolutely aged poorly.
and that's a big thing too. Like James Bond, we always talk about like the gadgets, like you said too, but this one kind of pulled back. I think on like just like tech and stuff. I mean, we get what like the tracker, and then of course we get like the heart monitor and stuff too, or whatever in the different things like in the car. Other than that, we don't really get all these gadgets and stuff, and that's one thing that's missing. And I think that's probably an influence of like the Jason Bourne films and stuff that don't really, kind of changes the spy, formula or whatever a little bit here. And definitely with James Bond, though, like you said, we're gonna get into too much the other Daniel Craig ones. The gadgets do make a return in later Daniel Craig Bond films.
Yeah, but I like in Casino Royale where the gadgets aren't that important, where the gadgets are pushed to the peripheral of everything that's going on, because it doesn't affect the plot. The plot isn't revolving around the idea of a crazy car chase with a remote controlled car. Again, I don't mean to pick on Pierce Brosnan's James Bond at all. I'm okay with that. That was something that was new and different. What I'm not okay with was the outrageous product placement of gadgets that aren't really gadgets, where it's like, all right, everyone has cell phones. You don't need to show all these close-ups where you can just make sure that you say Sony Ericsson, like no one needs that. It just means that like we're doing it 15 years later that your movie just looks silly. You just have James Bond look at a phone. Everyone knows it's a cell phone. Cool.
Well, probably goes on to your point too, like how much faith did they really have in this movie leading up to it? I mean, all that product placement is to make money, so it's like, well, here we go. Here's some for sure money that we got even before we get ticket sales.
I can't say that product placement has no place in a James Bond film because, yeah, okay, there's clearly product placement all the time in James Bond. Like, even the old ones, there's product placement for, like, ski gear and stuff like that. He's wearing the appropriate brand, It's not like it's new. It's just that in context to, like, the story that they're telling, it's not so off-putting. It's like, okay, well, at least he's wearing appropriate ski vest or something like that. That makes perfect sense. Everybody in this film has Sony phones. Everybody in this film has Sony laptops. Half this review is going to make me complaining about the fact that Sony shoved their crap into the film. All of these scenes are needed. You can't really take one out or else the film kind of doesn't make sense. But all of these technology scenes are maybe the spot where it takes me out of my viewing experience.
One thing in elements of James Bond films that we normally are accustomed to that we also get in this James Bond film, the action. I think the action's pretty good, even though some of it I think is a little bit more of a newer take on it, especially near the beginning when we have this big parkour chase scene and stuff too. So that was something that, is James Bond, but then also feels a little bit fresh. We also get a lot of the play on words and stuff from James Bond, another element of his character, words that have double meanings and stuff too.
I'm sorry. That last hand nearly killed me.
It's glad to see that those are included in this Bond film, just to let the audience know, yes, it's a new film, kind of rebooting it maybe a little bit, but this is the same character.
Yeah, it's fun. I like the double entendre stuff that goes on there. Wink and a nudge towards where we've come from, but we're not going to make that joke. Basically, the one that stands out in my mind is he's going over oh, we're madly in love and we're on our vacation, and she Vesper, she asks well what's my cover name, and he's like,
You're Miss Stephanie Broadchester, yeah.
I am not.
You're gonna have to trust me on this.
Oh no, I don't.
That's the joke. None of that. We don't need the old pussy galore. Okay, the over the top ridiculous naming of Bond girls and villains and stuff like that. Okay, get over that. None of that's here, and I like it. I'm okay with it. I in fact think it's crazy to think that most of this film, the heavy bulk of this film, is set at a poker game. And it's entertaining. How dare you make such an entertaining James Bond film with so few crazy large action set pieces? I'm enthralled the entire time I'm watching it to see whether or not James is going to pull this off, to see whether or not James is going to get over himself, to see whether or not when he goes all in, oh my God, is he going to do it? Is this it? Because the first time he does it, he fails, and that's that big hit to his ego, and I love it. I love that reinvention of this character.
I love too that we spend so much time at this casino and stuff, yet we're not really making it about poker. It's not really about the cards and stuff. What the story is really about is how to read people, and it's interesting that this movie is so much about James Bond and building this James Bond character and stuff, and being able to read James Bond and how he reads other people. That's what makes it interesting to me. It's not about cards at all, and James Bond points it out near the beginning of the film.
Then you'll also know that in poker you never play your hand. You play the man across from you.
And you're good at reading people.
Yes, I am.
So that's a great way, I think, to build characters, and you put that right in the film.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't notice Daniel Craig's perfectly sculpted bum?
You noticed.
But yeah, it's never really about the poker game. It's never really about the card game. It's all about the characters and everything. And then, of course, the ultimate thing that happens at the end is this James Bond, Mr. I'm really good at reading people, and I'm really good at seeing through all of the bull that's happening, is bit by that when it turns out Vesper's been, playing him to some degree, and he didn't see it. And so that's that ultimate last bruise to his ego of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I was so stupid and I let this happen, basically. And that is straight into the ending of how we get James Bond, the character that we all know and love, basically.
I love it. To me, it was the excellent ending. He isn't James Bond until he says that, I think, at the end of the film.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
In conclusion, watching Casino Royale is definitely still works for me. It's still a pleasure. Still good to go back and see where Daniel Craig's James Bond started. In all honesty, from my perspective, go back and watch all the Daniel Craig movies if you're planning on seeing No Time to Die, because I do think, having just done that myself, that would be a great help to anyone who wants to go watch No Time to Die, because it's clearly trying to tie up all the loose ends of these characters. So, Casino Royale, excellent. My favorite Daniel Craig James Bond movie so far. What about you, Matt?
I really like Casino Royale. This is a really good film. Even if it's not my favorite Daniel Craig film, I love this one a lot. It's really good to go check out. And definitely, like Randall said, be sure to check this out along with the other ones leading up to No Time to Die kind of thing. I'm excited for that film. Let us know what you guys think. Are you guys excited for No Time to Die? How do you think about Casino Royale? Is it near the top of your list? Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews. We have new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews, we take a look at TV shows, and we have deeper dive discussions.
We also have our Facebook page, so make sure to go check us out over there if you haven't. We post the day before on Facebook what's going to be coming up next on YouTube, and also things from our other fandoms. If you don't want to bother with us over on Facebook, just put us on your schedules. We're posting new videos every Monday and Thursday. For now, I'm Randall here in Texas. See everyone next time.
And I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.